Slovenia stands out as a role model for the nations. Not only did it grow faster than almost any other post-socialist country, but it also has some of the lowest wealth inequality anywhere on earth. To put that into perspective, Slovenia went from being part of Yugoslavia to now being wealthier than Spain. What makes it even more surprising is how differently Slovenia did it. Poland, for example, used shock therapy to quickly move to capitalism, focusing heavily on foreign investment. Slovenia took another path, and with it, it achieved one of the smoothest transitions out of all the former planned economies. But even Europe's perfect economy has cracks. Slovenia faces three big challenges that could threaten its future. So how did this small country avoid the economic traps that caught so many others, and what problems lie ahead? To answer that, let's break it down into few chapters. Slovenia in Yugoslavia. How and why Slovenia gained independence and how it transitioned to capitalistic model. These three challenges that the country will have to overcome. Slovenia has a rich history, but to keep things short, let's start with its time in Yugoslavia. When people think of Eastern Bloc countries, there is a common stereotype. Most of them had planned economies. They were also under heavy Soviet Union's influence, and they traded mainly inside the bloc. Moreover, they had limited travel freedoms and they were militarily tied to Moscow. But Yugoslavia was different. Its leader, Josip Broz Tito, wanted the country to stay independent and neutral during the Cold War. Yugoslavia even became one of the founding members of the non-aligned movement, a group of countries that did not want to take sides between the United States and the Soviet Union. Economically, Yugoslavia also worked differently. While the Soviet Union had a very top-down model where Moscow decided everything from how many apartments to build to how many screws to produce and such others, Yugoslavia allowed more flexibility. It used a system called workers' self-management. In this system, workers had more control over their factories. They could decide how much to produce and where to reinvest the profits. While it wasn't perfect, it allowed factories to react a bit faster to market changes compared to the Soviet model. Another key difference was local autonomy. In the Soviet Union, almost everything was planned in Moscow through rigid 5-year plans. In Yugoslavia, the republics had much more freedom to choose what industries to develop and what projects to prioritize. Slovenia benefited a lot from this setup. It was by far the richest republic in Yugoslavia. With less than 10% of the population, Slovenia produced 20% of Yugoslavia's GDP and 1/3 of its exports. Slovenian factories were more advanced, productivity was higher, and many of its goods were sold to Western Europe. So why was Slovenia so far ahead? Part of the reason goes back even farther. Before joining Yugoslavia, Slovenia was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and it had already been more industrialized and connected to Central Europe. After World War II, this head start meant Slovenia had a more educated workforce, a more diversified economy, and better access to global markets than most of the neighbors. So under Yugoslavia, Slovenia was already relatively rich and successful compared to other socialist countries. But if things were so good, why did Slovenia push for independence? That's the question we will explore in chapter 2. In 1980, the leader of Yugoslavia, Josip Broz Tito, passed away. His death left a major political vacuum. Tito had ruled with a strong central power and was able to balance the competing interests of the different Yugoslav republics. While he was alive, he acted as the glue holding the country together. But Tito never appointed a successor. Once he was gone, cracks started to appear quickly. Local politicians in each republic began gaining more popularity, often by appealing to nationalism. Every republic wanted more control over its own affairs. Some even wanted dominance over others. Serbia under Slobodan Milošević pushed for more power in the federation, which directly threatened the autonomy of smaller republics like Slovenia and Croatia. Ethnic tensions across Yugoslavia were boiling over. In December 1990, Slovenia held an independence referendum. The results sent a clear message. 88% of voters said yes to leaving Yugoslavia. On June 25, 1991, Slovenia officially declared independence, but it did not come without a fight. The Yugoslav army moved in to crush the movement. What followed was the 10-day war. By July, Slovenia had secured its independence, standing as one of the first republics to break away from Yugoslavia. But political independence was only the first step. Now came the economic challenge. How would Slovenia transition from a socialist-style system to market economy? Many other post-socialist countries went for what was called a shock therapy. Poland and Russia are the two clearest examples. Shock therapy meant quickly selling off state-owned companies, opening markets overnight, and attracting foreign investors as fast as possible. The hope was that rapid change would jumpstart growth. In practice, however, it often caused chaos. Slovenia took a very different path. Its leaders decided on a slow and careful transition. Instead of selling everything off at once, they restructured industries gradually, allowing companies and workers time to adjust. This patient approach gave Slovenia a huge advantage. If we compare Slovenia with Poland and Russia in the 1990s, the differences are big. Poland and Slovenia both managed to grow their economies relatively quickly. Russia, on the other hand, took nearly 2 decades just to recover to its pre-1990 levels. Unemployment also tells the story. In Slovenia, unemployment peaked at around 9% in 1993 before coming back down. In Poland, it climbed above 16%, and in Russia it passed 13%. What's worse, unemployment in Poland and Russia remained stubbornly high for years. Slovenia's smoother transition made job losses more manageable and recovery much faster. Inequality is another area where Slovenia stood out. In Russia, the rapid sell-off of industries created a powerful oligarch class. Inequality skyrocketed, with a small elite controlling most of the country's wealth. Poland also saw inequality grow during its transition. Slovenia avoided this pitfall. By keeping reforms gradual, it protected ordinary people from sudden shocks and managed to preserve its strong social safety net. This is a key reason Slovenia is often seen as a model transition economy. While many post-socialist countries struggled with poverty, collapsing welfare systems, and social unrest, Slovenia avoided the worst of it. People still had access to healthcare, education, and pensions. Poverty rates remained far lower than in Poland or Russia. By the early 2000s, Slovenia was already one of the richest former socialist countries. Its next big step came in 2004, when it joined the European Union. This was a turning point. European Union membership opened access to Western markets, brought in billions of euros in development funds, and gave Slovenia a clear path towards integration with Europe's wealthiest economies. Slovenia built on its strong industrial base, modernized infrastructure, and became one of the most stable economies in Central and Eastern Europe. In 2007, it became the first ex-Yugoslav country to adopt the euro, which made trade within the European Union much easier. Then came the global financial crisis of 2008. Like most of Europe, Slovenia was hit hard. Its banking system faced major stress and unemployment spiked. But unlike some of its neighbors, Slovenia recovered in less than a decade. By the mid-2010s, the economy was growing again, and living standards were back on the rise. Slovenia's story is remarkable. A smooth transition, smart integration into the European Union, and a relatively fast recovery from crisis. But no economy is perfect. Despite its successes, Slovenia faces a few challenges that could threaten its stability in the future. Which brings us to Chapter 3. First challenge is demographics. Slovenia, just like any other developed nation, is facing low birth rates. The replacement birth rate is at 2.1 babies per woman. However, in Slovenia, the fertility rates are at less than 1.6 babies per woman. Slovenia's population is slowly shrinking. However, what makes it worse is that the median age is also slowly going up. The current median age for the country is at above 44 years old, which puts it as one of the oldest populations in the world. It is expected that the population will get older and older, and thus the country will have to spend more and more on pensions. Currently, Slovenia spends around 11% of its GDP on pensions. However, that number is projected to increase to more than 18% by 2050. Aging population will put significantly more pressure on healthcare sector and pension system. Another issue Slovenia faces is Europe's recent economic slowdown. Slovenia depends heavily on the European Union, and almost all of its top trading partners are European Union members. In recent years, Europe's economy has slowed down, and that's a big risk for Slovenia. Germany and France, two of the European Union's biggest economies, are already struggling with low growth and high inflation. Many European Union countries rely on Germany and France for trade, while others depend on European Union funds that are financed largely by these two giants. For a small export-driven country like Slovenia, troubles in the European Union's biggest economies can quickly spill over and hurt its growth. A small but noteworthy problem could be Slovenia's small business sector. More than 95% of all companies are small and medium enterprises, or SMEs for short. Now, having small businesses are not necessarily bad, as they often have flexibility and contribute a lot to local economy. However, such companies might be less productive compared to big companies due to not having enough economy of scale. Average annual growth of productivity of Slovenia is quite decent compared to OECD countries and the European Union as a whole. However, it falls significantly short compared to countries like United States, China and Poland. Last but not least is the brain drain issue. Germany and France may offer better career opportunities to young people, thus a lot of young Slovenians are leaving the country. Moreover, Slovenia's real estate is not necessarily affordable to young people. For example, in 2024, nominal wages increased by 6.2%. However, housing prices increased by almost more than 8%. Do keep in mind that if we adjust wage increase for inflation, gross salaries only increased by 4.1%. This obviously motivates more and more young people to not stay in the country and instead seek better life in foreign countries such as Germany, France or others. So, is Slovenia in trouble? Well, not necessarily. There are some problems that Slovenia might face, such as high taxes, complex bureaucracy and shrinking population. However, I don't necessarily think that any of those problems can't be managed. For one, Slovenia is one of the nicest places to live in. However, it can quite easily attract educated foreigners from other countries and essentially fix the real estate issues through countless reforms. Hey, thank you for watching my video. If you have liked the video, please subscribe so you will not miss out on our future uploads.